Ed Driscoll. Welcome to Silicon Graffiti. It may not be 3 a.m., and I'm not sure if the phone is ringing, but we finally arrived at the fourth quarter of the 2008 presidential election. So let's head down to the field and check out the hard-hitting action in the trenches. On the football field, late hits and out-of-bound plays are a fact of life. And in the last weeks of an election year, the late hits and October surprises come fast and furious.
Welcome back to Hardball. Part of the folklore of presidential campaigns ever since 1980 is something called the October surprise. And just 7 days before the election, the unexpected is indeed happening. Hardball election correspondent David Schuster reports.
Traditionally, an October surprise is seen as a last-minute political trick to try to influence an election. In 1972, Henry Kissinger said that peace was at hand in Vietnam as his boss Richard Nixon sought a second term. In 1980, Ronald Reagan's campaign worried that President Carter would somehow engineer a last-minute release of the American hostages in Iran. On the Friday before the 1992 election, Iran-Contra Special Prosecutor Lawrence Walsh indicted President Bush's Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger.
As George Will wrote in September of 2003, the October surprise has become the Democrats' trademark tactic. In football, it is penalized as a late hit, but in politics, it is often rewarded with success. George W. Bush received such a hit in the final weekend of the 2000 campaign, the revelation of his drunk driving arrest 24 years earlier. That probably contributed to an unusual development. Late deciding voters, who usually break against the incumbent party, broke for Vice President Gore in 2000. Will added that the October surprise is a particular favorite amongst California Democrats. And sure enough, a month after his September 2003 op-ed rant, the LA Times delivered a late hit in the form of a 3,500-word article on Arnold Schwarzenegger running against Gray Davis in the California recall election. The Times alleged that Schwarzenegger behaved on rowdy Hollywood film sets in the 1970s and 80s pretty much in the same fashion that Bill Clinton behaved with interns in the otherwise buttoned-down Oval Office. Incidentally, note that as late as the 2003 California recall election, we still tended to think of October surprises as one-time events. But with the proliferation of new and old media covering the presidential election in 2004, the speed of the internet, and the increasing interconnectivity between the new left and old media, the hits flew fast and furiously in the last weeks of 2004, to the point where they largely canceled themselves out in overloaded viewers' minds. First, there was what became known as Nitrogate, in which the New York Times claimed that explosives were missing in Iraq. As James Glassman of Tech Central Station noted, though, the story itself was sort of a dud. It reminded viewers that, unlike the happiness and sunshine images that Michael Moore tried to paint Iraq in, it was a very dangerous place during Saddam Hussein's era, full of dangerous weapons. And then Osama bin Laden turned up on videotape, leading to this classic moment shared between two elderly television pioneers.
Okay, Walter, what do you make of this? Now the question is basically, right now, how will this affect the election? And I have a feeling that it could tilt the election a bit. In fact, I'm a little inclined to think that Claude Rowe, the political manager at the White House, who was a very clever man, he probably set bin Laden to this thing.
Of course, all of that was preceded by CBS's botched September surprise, blown up by a bunch of guys in their pajamas. Let's flash forward 2 years to the fall of 2006. First came the infamous Macaca incident, in which the Washington Post ran over 100 articles on then-Republican Senator George Allen's momentously stupid mispronunciation of his campaign's pet name for his opponent's Mohawk-wearing spy. Then there was the Mark Foley scandal. In her first video blog from the fall of 2006, Mary Catherine Ham said that the classic October surprise should be simple enough that voters can diagram it on a cocktail napkin. And that scandal certainly fit the bill.
Show any American this bar napkin, and they'll understand the scandal. Here we have a 17-year-old Page. He's a boy. He's easily mistaken for a girl because I've given him a page boy haircut to indicate his position. Here's Congressman Foley. I have given him a tie to indicate that he is a congressman. Here are their computers. In between the computers, we have inappropriate messages, both affectionate, as indicated by hearts, and X-rated, as indicated by X's. There you have it, an American scandal in October. Very simple.
Of course, the original history of October surprises goes way back, as liberal historian Doris Kearns Goodwin explained a couple of years ago.
In 1942, the Democrats were worried about whether they'd do well in the midterm elections because the war had been going on for a year. There'd been no major action against Germany. And Roosevelt was hoping for a positive October surprise. There was going to be an invasion of North Africa, but Eisenhower postponed it until 5 days after the election, so that didn't help. But then even worse for the Democrats, some crazy bureaucrat in the Roosevelt administration announced 3 days before the election that coffee was going to be rationed to 1 cup per day. The citizens were so outraged that the Democrats lost 44 seats in the House and 9 in the Senate, and it was considered the coffee scandal.
Over a cup of joe.
With or without plenty of coffee to keep us awake at night, will there be an October surprise going bump into night just around the time Halloween rolls around this year? You can count on it. It's a safe bet that the names Ayers and Wright will receive plenty of lip service from the McCain campaign this month. And on the flip side, just this past weekend, we saw the Associated Press act as de facto surrogates of the Obama campaign in describing any mention of their names by the McCain campaign as racist. And much like Doris Kearns Goodwin's reminiscence of 1942, historians may well look back on this year's financial crisis as an early October surprise of sorts. In other words, whether you drive a Prius or a Suburban, fasten your seatbelts. The last weeks are going to be rough. For Silicon Graffiti inside famed Pajama Stadium, located just off Interstate I-80 deep in the blogosphere, I'm Ed Driscoll.